Welcome to Hard Claim with Vivaless Sam. I'm Sam, and this is a show where we talk to people who play Blood on the Clocktower and get their player perspective of the game. And today we actually have two guests, so welcome Reznora and Malashaan.
Hi.
Oh, thanks for joining. So to start out, you all have picked a script, a birthday feast. I've sent out character tokens. You all have a character that I will not say because you all don't know what each other are. So we do like to open with asking, what would you like to hard claim?
I'm the acrobat.
I'm the noble.
The novel.
The novel, yes. The gnoble.
There's no G.
Alright. So now's a good time to ask why you all picked what you did. Malashaan, what actually are you?
I'm actually the courtier.
Did you use your ability?
I did not use it.
So what was your thought process? Like, how would you like to play courtier? Like, what are you thinking about when deciding to use your ability?
So if there's a spy on script, I will almost always use it immediately on the spy because that's just funny. Because then the storyteller has to make a fake grim for the spy. Otherwise, I almost always will hold it for at least a day and figure out like what I think is in play, and then go for it. Like on this script, if I think there's a leech in play, it's great to have the courtier active because you can just use it on the leech and then execute the leech. Beyond that, I'm looking for like Devil's Advocate is always powerful, or if I can narrow the demon type down, that's the best. But often I'll go for fully on this script. I would often end up going for DA Knight too.
That makes sense. Reznora, what are you actually?
I'm actually the imp.
Funny enough, our first evil player, I believe, in this series so far.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
So the bluffs I gave, and I didn't super think about this too hard, but I gave Sailor, Oracle, and Acrobat. Why did you choose Acrobat?
It's actually really funny because before you gave me the bluffs, I was thinking about what I was gonna bluff, and I landed on Acrobat anyway. So, so when I saw it as a bluff, I was like, "This is perfect." So with this script, there's a couple different ways there can be extra outsiders, and with the imp's ability to star pass, making it look like there's either a Godfather or a Fangu in play that's added an extra outsider, and then being able to, star pass in the night is just kind of a nice little cushy thing where you're probably not going to get looked at too closely too early, but aside from the fact that I usually want to die early in a Fangu game as an outsider, I might be able to be like, okay, I'll live through the first day and then I'm out. And usually it'll be fine.
Makes sense. All right. Well, how did you all discover Blood on the Clocktower, and about how long ago was that?
So, we discovered it through No Rules Bard. So whenever they did their first Blood on the Clocktower video, that's when we found it.
Yeah, I played my first game in June 2021. I know that.
And yours was like mid-June, and mine was the end of June. Because
Yeah.
I'd been watching it longer, like more consistently longer, because I don't work. But you were braver than I was, so you started playing before I did.
And do you remember what your first game or several games were like? And I guess Malashaan, will start with you since you started slightly earlier.
I remember my first game very well because I was the empath who convinced myself I was the drunk in a trouble brewing and had
Classic.
game-solving information and didn't believe it because I was convinced I was the drunk.
Like a true expert player.
Yeah.
What about you, Reznora?
My first game, I was the Raven Keeper, and I hard claimed Raven Keeper, and nobody believed me. So I died in the night, going from Final 4 to Final 3, and ended up picking the demon in the night, and that's how we won the game.
Nice.
When did you all first play your first game together?
Good question.
I want to say it was probably pretty soon after we started playing.
Yeah.
All right. How often or how long did you play before you kind of had the thought that you were hooked to the game? Was it pretty early on, or did it take a little bit?
If it was like immediate, I think.
Yeah, I was already pretty obsessed with watching it. I was like, I really love this game.
Yeah.
So once I started playing, it was just like, yeah, I enjoyed playing it as much as I expected I would.
And why was that? What did you expect to like about it? What did you end up liking about it?
Do you want to take that, or shall I?
You can take it.
Okay. So for me, I think there's quite a lot of people that have this view that I don't like social deduction games. Like, I'd played Werewolf, hated it. I'd played Mafia, hated it. And then saw this game, and I'm a very mathematical person, and I liked the fact initially that it was more like just a logic puzzle for me, and there wasn't really a social part of it. It was like my first few games, I was just treating it as a logic puzzle. And then it was over time that I kind of got into the social side of it and realized that the social stuff could supplement the logic analysis. But that first me, it was like having a game where I could just solve puzzles.
It's basically the same for me as well. I'm more mathematically inclined brain wise, but I've always loved logic problems. I always say that I'm not really good at the social deduction side of this, but I do really like puzzle solving. And so trying to solve out mechanical info is my favorite part of this game.
Always do like that about this game is that there are multiple aspects to it, and not everybody's good at all of them, but there are multiple things that really tend to draw different people in. I think it's pretty cool. How often do you all get to play currently, either online and or in person?
You go first.
So we both play multiple times a week. So we have our stream, so we play every Thursday unless we're not home. And then we play on TPI Thursdays if we're scheduled, and then pretty much every Sunday. And that's about my tolerance for how much I can play this game before I feel like it's kind of overrunning my life and I need a break. So I that's where I'm like, okay, that's my max. That is not Mal's max at all.
Yeah, I play most days in the evening. I'll play a game. On then there's all the stuff Rez mentioned, and then most evenings that aren't one of those days, at some time between 8 and 11, I'll find a random server from the app or from Patreon and just join a game and play.
It is a shocking day if Mal has not played. Mal is addicted to this game.
Yes.
Fair. Do y'all get to play in person much?
No.
Not much. We play the conventions. There is a local group that meets kind of not very consistently that I didn't know about for a long time, but I've played with them a few times. Rez has never played with them, but it's pretty. They haven't played for 3 months, I don't think. So
the hilarious thing is that we found out about it through someone on the CT server who does not live in Vermont. That there was a group that met, that they had their own server and that they occasionally met in person. Because as far as we knew, there was nobody in Vermont that played. So,
yeah.
But now we found them and it's great.
Do you have an estimate on how much you played altogether?
I know I started tracking my games in November. So I started playing in June 2020. I started tracking my games at the end of November, and I've played 1,200 games since then, plus a few that I didn't put in the spreadsheet because I forgot about them.
There are also games that Mal does not record on her spreadsheet because she does not feel that they're worthy of the spreadsheet.
Very occasionally. If I play a game with people I don't know and I feel like they're just someone's throwing the game, I'll okay, this one is statistically nonsense.
Yeah, or
so I'm not going to record it.
Completely.
Or if the storyteller, if the storyteller absolutely scuffs something, I won't include it.
Fair.
Yeah. I have no clue because I have no interest in keeping stats. To me, that would take the fun out of the game for me, so I don't want to know.
That's fair. So when playing this game, I feel like there's a progression of kind of beginner player to intermediate to experienced, however you want to define that. I don't know how do y'all think about that journey for you all, going from kind of getting used to the game to eventually being regulars who play every week or every day?
It happened really swiftly. I feel like because this game is one that you get really hooked on it, or you can get really hooked on it. So we both started, and I want to say within a month, I think we were playing like regularly on Wednesdays and Saturdays on the CT server because they had beginner Wednesday, or it was beginner Wednesdays, or was it Tuesdays?
It was
The
originally
TV
Tuesdays and then
Tuesdays
it moved to
then.
Wednesdays. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, but they had they had and still do have a beginner night weekly. So that was like a great night to like, it's like we can do that, still during, during the pandemic. I was like, what else are we gonna do? Um so when you start playing multiple times a week with a consistent group of players, like it is really easy to quickly kind of go, your skill level build really quickly. And like it's such a blur for me, but I know it was very quickly from playing. Like I think the first few days I was like trying to get in as many games as I could because it was so much fun, and then it went to I wasn't as maybe I was playing every day or maybe I wasn't playing every day, but I was certainly definitely playing every Wednesday and every Saturday on the Connecticut server because those were, consistent games, and they were a great group, and it was very beginner friendly and then also very intermediate friendly.
I think for me, the progression I noticed was when I first started not being able to track the mechanics, like not understanding what was going on with the Grim, and playing with people who are more experienced who would just like, be like, oh yeah, like this person must be this and this person must be this, and like not understanding how they got there, and spending time working towards the point of like, okay, I can track the mechanics now, to a point where I kind of went past mechanics almost, where I don't think that much about mechanics anymore because I instinctively understand the mechanics. So it freed me up to think about the social side more. Of like, I'm not focused on the mechanics because I can think it through if I have to, but most of the time it's just a gut feeling of like, okay, like my brain processes the mechanics and I can just think about, okay, that's impossible, so I'm not going to think about it. This is possible. What do I think socially? And there's kind of three distinct stages of like not understanding anything, being very, very mechanical, but not thinking about anything other than the mechanics, and then like being so fluent with the mechanics that I didn't think about them anymore.
Yeah, I know I'm considered an expert player. I never feel like I'm an expert player, even though like
Oh, God.
Mal says like, like I have all this knowledge and experience. I don't necessarily have to stop and think about the mechanics of everything all the time because I just know it and it's become like second nature for a lot
Right.
of the things. But it just, I don't know, maybe it's like in my own head and like how I see myself, but I'm just like I always feel like everyone else is like, like all the within my playgroups, I'm like everyone else here is better than me, and I'm just like I'm the intermediate here. Like
I may have said expert, but I actually I try to say experienced rather than expert because I feel like it doesn't get because skill level is a weird concept in this game anyway. But
yeah.
experience definitely works, I guess. Malashaan, you said
like,
you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think it's like that. It is that kind of like just inboarding to your brain of like the knowledge of the mechanics. That like the longer you play, the more that just becomes instinctive, and that frees you up to just play the game rather than be thinking constantly about what the information means.
I think it helps that we both consumed the content like for months. Like we watched every NRB video, we were watching every TPI stream for months before we started playing. So, and when we were very aware, like you're not gonna go into your first game knowing everything. We still started with Trouble Brewing and played several Trouble Brewing games before we were like, then we move up to SNV and then we move up to BMR and then we move up to customs. But it is like it does give you a really good background because you like kind of you're not starting from zero, you are starting with some sort of base knowledge, and I think that was really helpful, at least for me, to not feel so overwhelmed with this game because I think otherwise I probably would have felt very overwhelmed.
Yeah, I know something as a regular storyteller. That's something I've noticed from players who maybe haven't necessarily played much but have watched a lot, and it does seem they like you said you still want to start with Trouble Brewing, but it does give a leg up, and a lot of times they can move more quickly to other scripts after that. Malashaan, you said you don't like other social deduction games that you played. What about you, Reznora? Have you played any others?
I think the only one I've ever played was Werewolf, and like it was fine. The thing I didn't like about it was that when you were dead, you couldn't participate, essentially. And that just that feels patently unfun to me. Like, if you're there to play a game with your friends, what is the point of this game when like a bunch of people can no longer participate and just kind of have to sit there? And I don't, it could just be my ADHD where just sitting there silently is just not something I'm good at.
I would play before doing Clocktower, I'd play on Zoom doing like 20 plus player games of Werewolf. And if you're the first one eliminated, you're out for the next 2 to 3 hours, and it might have took you 30 minutes, 60 minutes to get set up for that game.
Yeah, that just seems like a nightmare to me.
So of the games that you all do play on a regular basis, I know Reznor you play less. How often are they together? You all together playing?
Every game that I play with Malashaan.
Pretty much. You very occasionally play on a stream without me, but yeah, it's probably about 50%. I probably play about as much again as like I play with Rez. I play on my own.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think you probably play more without me than you play with me because you do play every night, and and I don't, and you do multiple. Sometimes you play multiple games a night, so you do play more. Yeah, you play more without me.
But I often only do one on the nights I'm playing on my own. Versus like Thursdays we'll sometimes do like 7 or 8 games. If we do like if it's a 3-day TPI and we do our stream with 2 or 3 games, we can end up with like 6, 7 games. But
yeah, really the only time I'm ever playing without Mal is if Mal's like away on a work trip, or if for whatever reason we're not both scheduled in the same TPI game, but that's rare.
I'm curious if y'all have talked to each other about playing together, if you had to work anything out, or how y'all feel about playing with each other, as much or as little as you're willing to discuss that. I'm just curious to kind of dive into that a bit.
I mean, I don't know if Mal's comfortable with me saying this or not, but we've had fights. Like, I feel like if you're a couple playing a game like this, you might have fights because you're going to be on opposite teams. And it was basically stuff pretty much early on to us playing together, and it was basically kind of finding what our boundaries were. And once we kind of settled on what our boundaries were, we basically haven't had any issues, with the exception of sometimes one of us like crossed a boundary thinking it wasn't crossing a boundary, and it was basically like the boundary wasn't clear.
Yeah, I think it's been a process of clarifying the boundary of exactly like I think I'm trying to remember exactly how we initially phrased it, but our initial boundary was like it's fine to lie to each other, but don't like co-opt the other person into your quote bullshit. And then but exactly what that means took a little bit of figuring out. Like, okay, so how much? So like if I'm like if I'm evil and I'm selling a world, I'm not gonna like pull Rez into a chat and keep like trying to like bring her into my world. I'll just like talk to her day one and give her my false claim, and then like let it sit there.
And our comfort levels are very different too. Like, Mal is more comfortable with me like roping her into my bullshit than I'm comfortable with being roped into Mal's bullshit. Or like I'm not super comfortable being like Mal's fall person and Mal's like not as bothered. Like, I still try to not like, just like my own personal boundary, I don't want to like use my information and like point to Mal as like the evil person if I'm an evil player. Like, and I try not to do that. Sometimes it kind of like ends up happening just based on how the game plays out and how you're like building worlds, and then you're like, well shit, I've kind of backed myself into a corner on this one and now I have to point at my spouse. But I never set out to do that because to me it kind of feels like that's something I wouldn't want Mal to do, so I try not to do it. But generally Mal doesn't care as much about that than I do.
I assume in the grand scheme of things, y'all find that it's worth it to be able to play together.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well known. Like we have our own little metas that are developed because we decided like when we play together, we always do first whisper day one, and that creates some interesting dynamics. Like if one of us is a minion, like we know we're going to go into that conversation without a bluff. So it's kind of like I've developed like, okay, how am I going to be a minion specifically engaged with Rez, because I know I'm going to have to just like come up with something. And so it creates interesting dynamics, and so it's like in games like the opposite of that is if Rez comes to me day one with a confident like hard claim, I'm pretty comfortable saying to everybody like she's either the demon or what she's claiming. Like she's not a minion with that claim because she was really confident in it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit more about y'all having conversations always at the start of day one. I guess what made you all decide that you will pretty much always do that instead of just kind of doing your own thing and then meeting up later?
I think it started because we didn't know anybody else. Like when we started playing, we started with each other. We started playing on unofficial, and we didn't know anyone else. So it was kind of this natural thing of we would just go off first because like other people were breaking away because they kind of knew each other. They'd grab somebody, and like we knew each other, so we just go off together first, and then it just became habit.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you ever have any exceptions to talking to anybody else on day one? Just out of curiosity.
I don't. I always try to get Mal first. And I always find it telling because it's sometimes when players that we've played with for a long time try to grab Mal first, I always try to read that because that comes up. But yeah, no, it's just kind of like it's just like our thing that we do, and that now we're so efficient at it that it's like 10 seconds. Like we're in and we're out, and then we're just waiting until for people to get back.
Yeah, every time.
Right. Y'all talked a little bit what's it like to be on the opposite teams. How's it like when y'all are evil together?
It doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen very often. Like, there used to be a joke that like we were never on the same team. I think it's like dried up a bit. We're good together, but we're very rarely evil together.
Yeah, for the first run we were always on opposite teams. No, but when we're evil together, I'm more comfortable. Being evil really stresses me out. It feels like there's a lot of pressure because especially when you're the demon, like it feels like you're responsible for whether or not your team wins or loses, essentially, because the game ends if you're executed. And so I feel that pressure so much less when Mal's on my team than I do when I'm on team with anyone else. Like if I aside from the fact that people would meta the shit out of it, like if I was a Kazali, like I would obviously want to pick Mal because Mal, I feel so comfortable being evil with Mal. Plus, Mal is just an amazing player and really good at being evil. Although I think I'm better at being evil.
I did play in the Ogre release game with you all, and Reznora, you were the Ogre, and I remember asking you, I was like, so the question is, do you do the obvious choice of Malashaan or do you go with somebody else? And honestly, I didn't automatically meta that you would go with Malashaan, and sure enough, you didn't.
No, it was that is the thing I want to fight against because it while it's comfortable, is the safe and comfortable thing to do. It is kind of one of those things where it starts to also kind of become sometimes unfun for us and sometimes unfun for the people that we're playing with if we're always just, they're just going to keep picking each other for everything. I might with picking abilities like, Chambermaid or Dreamer pick Mal first because I want to gain some insight into what's going on with my spouse and whether or not I'm being lied to by them. With that one, it's just like, you know what? Everyone's going to expect me to do this. And there's some pathological demand avoidance there, I guess. So I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna surprise everyone and pick somebody else.
So I'm gonna do a brief detour on the related one. So something I realized when I did the setup of this game is I did mean to have a marionette, and I didn't actually set that up. So interestingly, how would that first conversation gone differently if Malashaan was your marionette?
Oh, immediately you're my marionette. Immediately.
Well, there you go. We're going to make it so.
Not the other way around, because I don't want to know unless it's necessary.
Yep.
I have, in fact...
I wouldn't say anything.
I have, in fact, ran a game in person where you were a marionette, and it almost didn't go well, but then it did. But that's a whole other story.
I remember that game. It was really fun.
It was really fun. It was fun to run and watch. So, speaking of being good or being evil, which do you prefer? Do you prefer drawing a blue token or a red token?
Blue, 100% blue every time.
Mal?
Blue still.
Blue.
It's more even for me than it used to be, but still blue.
Fair. How do you feel about playing out at evil? And that doesn't necessarily mean like Vizier or Goblin, but just as a general concept.
I feel like if I'm going to be evil, I'd rather be outed evil because it's less pressure and a little bit more fun.
Yeah. Like
Right.
I'm always looking for opportunities when I'm evil. It's like, can I out now? Can I out now? Like I just want to do it. I have so much fun with it. Yeah, Vizier is one of my favorite characters for that reason because I can just like don't have to worry about it. I can just say whatever I want immediately.
Are there kinds of characters you prefer playing and prefer avoiding? Do you like information gathering characters, passive characters, etc.?
I think I prefer like the one and done. I like having a thing. It's because I don't like homework. um, and I don't like. While I like to solve other people's information, I have a hard time trying to like puzzle out mine. Um, but like, although Cannibal is my favorite character, and that's not one and done. Um, I think ongoing information like that and like I also really like Undertaker. Like ongoing information like that where you get something different every night that you don't have to solve. That's probably my favorite. Because you're not keeping track of everything. It's like this is a new thing that relates directly to what happened yesterday, and it's like separate from everything else. Like that's great. I love that.
I'm going to take a little bit of a detour here to explain this. It's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Is I got this like kind of theory of the game that like everyone thinks about like okay, there's mechanical information and there's social reads, and there's those kind of two pieces of the gameplay, and I think there's a third piece of the gameplay that's really important, which I call like kind of game state manipulation, which is so for example, Raven Keepers want to manipulate the evil team into killing them, and things like and maybe as an evil player you want to manipulate town into voting on certain people. And those kind of interactions of how do I convince this group of people to behave in a certain way, or an individual to behave in a certain way, that's what I find really interesting in the game. So I like characters where I can kind of play with that. So I like Ravenkeeper a lot and Sage and all the ones who want to die in the night because I enjoy that challenge of how do I convince the demon to kill me at night, because it doesn't stay consistent. Like you can just be an outed Ravenkeeper and the demon's like, yeah, I don't believe that, kill you. That works once, that demon isn't going to do it the next time. So it's kind of an ever evolving social problem. And it's the same reason I like being outed evil. It's like being outed evil is really, it's about what can I say to convince the good team to do what I want them to do when they know that I'm not on their team. So that's kind of any character where I can do that, where I can kind of like I'm trying to control the narrative rather than just specifically do like a solve. I really enjoy.
How do y'all feel about outsiders as being, a bit of a drawback to town and that kind of challenge to overcome?
Well, aside from the fact that I hate being an outsider in the Fangoo game, um, I actually don't mind outsiders that much. Um, I think they kind of serve an important purpose in terms of game balance. I think the only time I ever really have issues with outsiders is I think when you have like politicians, and this is just a personal preference, but when you have like politicians and goons who set out to be evil from the get-go. And and just because from my perspective it's like you are dealt a blue token, you are on the good team, like you're kind of supposed to, you know, play for your, for the team that you're on, not try to, like politician is a bit squiffy because you are, essentially trying to see if you can like cause your team to lose, but like certainly for the like, you're not supposed to set out to turn evil and stay evil. Like, so that's like my only thing. But like other than that, like, I have a fondness for most outsiders.
Yeah, I think most outsiders have their ability is in does something potentially harmful, and they can be harmful, but there's usually ways that you can kind of manipulate how you play them to make them beneficial. Whether it's like, in TB, like a hidden outsider can get confirmed. It's one of my favorite things that's happened in the game is if you can get to the end of like a base two outsider TB game with no one knowing you're an outsider, and then come out as an outsider and no one else has bluffed it. It's like you're confirmed good because you're the only outsider. Things like that. It's like like Moonchild's like. Yes, you kill someone, but you get information from. It's like there's a lot of ways that you can use outsiders to get useful information. And I find that to be an interesting. It's probably kind of back to the kind of controlling the narrative kind of idea that like there's a lot of interesting things you can do with abilities that are on their face harmful, but doesn't necessarily mean you can't use them to your advantage in some way.
I've had a golem win a game by punching the leech host.
Yep.
Like,
that'll do it.
yeah, like they can, I think a lot of people are a lot of people are like, ugh, outsiders, because they are, they can be really harmful to the good team, but a lot of times you just have to learn how to like handle them, and like how and especially like when to handle them, because if they're confirmed good, that's great, but a lot of times you're like, well, you're gonna have to deal with this at some point, like a butler voting or a golem who once they punch they can't nominate again. You're going to have to deal with that at some point because that's going to cause a problem for you later. But like at the same time, it is helpful. Like they can be really helpful. They are exactly like, a I'm trying to find the word for it, but like it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. So if you are evil, do you prefer being a demon or a minion?
Minion, 100% minion. It's less stressful.
So,
I would agree with that. What are your all's thoughts? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I did just play a game where I was an imp that star passed like night 3 and then told everybody I was the imp that had star passed, and that was very fun.
Going back to the whole outed evil thing?
Yep.
How do you all feel about the concept of madness in this game, especially Mutant and Serenovus, but also things like Pixie and Harpy?
I find it frustrating sometimes. I think a lot of players do. I think the thing that can be frustrating is just comes down to like different storytellers run it differently, and in the inconsistency in that can be frustrating for players, which is why it's always important for storytellers to like say how they run it, or for players to ask if they're playing with a new storyteller and they don't know. But it creates a fun dynamic. It keeps things. It's another thing about this game that keeps it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy playing around with it, and kind of again, it's a challenge of if you're mad but you've got information, like how can you push on the worlds you've got without breaking madness, or do you want to break madness? Is the value in doing that? Something I think about a lot as a storyteller. I think I execute less for madness breaks than most other storytellers, and I think that's. I probably take it too far, but I think majority of storytellers execute the madness too easily because it does confirm a lot of information. Like if a mutant breaks madness and dies, it confirms they're a mutant, and that can be really powerful. There's one thing I've seen so many players who just immediately when they're mad break madness, like, yeah, I want to die because it'll confirm stuff. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm not going to do it then because like it's meant to be a detriment to town. It's not meant to be like this is good for the town, especially if it's like a Serenovus. So like, I'm not gonna execute a player who wants to die to the Serenovus unless the game state like really says, oh, that player actually has to die because they're about to solve the game if they get another night of info. But generally, so I think it's really interesting anyway.
So of the base scripts, which ones are your least and most favorites?
My least favorite's BMR.
I think my favorite's TB. I don't have a preference for enjoyment between SNV and BMR, but my stat spreadsheet tells me I'm terrible at BMR.
Fair.
My favorite's TB because I think TB. So here's the thing: TB is like the least interesting, right? Because it's the introductory script. It's the one for everyone. It's the one for new players and people who are least experienced. But it is the most solid and produces like the highest, like consistently the highest like quality of you're generally gonna have a good time. I think we had a discussion at brunch today about a game Mal played in where it was not a good time, and it was probably one of the rarest like setups of a not good time for a TB that you could have. But other than that, like it's just, I think it's a pinnacle script in how balanced it is and everything. And so it's just like, I don't know, it's like a warm hug. Like it's that script's a warm hug. If any script in Clocktower was going to be a warm hug.
And I'll say the game we talked about, like no one had a bad time per se. It was just like a broken game. That the important information of it was an empath in a 7-player game. The empath sat between the demon and the minion with a slayer. So like we just executed one side and Slayer shot the other side and won. And like it was just like, oh, okay, that's over. Like it was just a very like, oh yeah, that was never going to go any other way than that game.
Reznora, what makes BMR your least favorite edition?
I think that it's more, for me, it's more of a social read script, and I'm not good at that. I feel like I'm weakest at social reads, and that's mostly social reads. And like I almost never have the solve right in BMR, like ever. So it's just and it's just the least fun for me to play, but I'll still do it and I'll still have a good time. But it's like I'm never as jazzed about it as I am Sex and Violets or Trouble Brewing.
Very fair. Thinking about custom scripts, so for example, right now we have a birthday feast loaded. Why was that script picked? What do you all like about it?
It's just always produces really fun games. I think, like, especially now that it's been tooled around with a bit, as part of that World Cup that TPI did that one time. It's like, I don't know, Mal made the script for my birthday like one year, and so it kind of feels like it's my script, even though initially none of my favorite characters were on it. But 2 of them are now, so it's fine.
Which character? Which are your favorite characters there?
So Cannibal is my favorite townsfolk, and Acrobat's my favorite outsider.
Oh,
and like it just we always have a good time playing it, and people seem to really enjoy it. So
Acrobat was always on it, to be clear. Acrobat was on it from the beginning. It was just Cannibal that I added.
Yeah, okay,
But yeah, but what I like about it is it was the first script I made, so the fact that it's a good script is complete luck. I just stumbled into something. But the design was like, because I made it for Vessa's birthday, like she said, and it was just like I had this idea of like, what would a medieval feast look like in a Clocktower script? So acrobat, juggler, like king. I kind of went through everything that just made sense to have in a medieval feast, and then fleshed it out to a full script. The first few times I ran it, I had a whole bunch of like flavor text around like the feast and stuff that I don't do very often anymore because it's tiring to come up with it every time. but what I've noticed about it is people always have fun with it, but I've played so many games of it that feel really different. Like sometimes it feels like a BMR, sometimes it feels like an S&V. Like it generates a lots of very different types of games depending on exactly what goes in the bag and exactly where they get distributed. And I find that really interesting. I don't know why that is. I've not figured out why that is, but the script generates a lot of different types of games, and that's really interesting.
I don't think I've ever ran this, but I feel like I should. Thinking about other custom scripts, are there anything other custom scripts that you like, or are there styles of custom scripts that you don't like?
I'm pretty open with customs. Like I generally prefer to play customs because like there's so many more, like there's so many more options. So every game you're getting something different. There's only like I won't play a script with an owl hat on it. that's like that's my restriction. And then there's some interactions that I'm wary of, like any script with a lichen on it that doesn't have any way for the evil team to neutralize that lichen. That's like a hard no for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like a lot. I really like your extension code scripts. I really like anything that Ekken's made, pretty much. The only
Navian makes amazing scripts.
Yep, Navian makes many amazing scripts. I forget Navian makes scripts because they make so many.
I'll sometimes hit them up when I need a new character release script or a new character script. Like Navian, what do you have for me?
Yeah, Navian. The last few months, Navian's been great for our stream. They've made us on very short notice. Have made us a script for the new character release because we stream right after the release release stream, and they've thrown together a script for us the last few months. Well, the only thing that's kind of I think I try and avoid is I think a lot of going back to what you said about level to play. I would say a lot of intermediate players when they're first getting into designing scripts go into this tunnel of I want to make the craziest script possible, and they throw together a bunch of interactions that just lead to for what me is just a not fun game because it's completely mechanically unsolvable.
Here
a
are
lot of
10
crazy
ways a
stuff
player
happens.
can be poisoned. And
Yeah, and I'm just
I've done
this is not fun. This is just crazy things happening.
here's 5 ways somebody can turn evil.
Yeah, and it's to me that's not fun. When it becomes just oh, let's be as crazy as we can, I don't enjoy it. Some people love that, I think. So I don't mind those scripts existing at all, but those are the ones I avoid when it's just crazy for the sake of crazy. I'm just okay, I want to actually play a game of Clocktower.
All right, one of my favorite sections to do on here is to ask you about divisive characters, or characters that not everybody's necessarily on board with. And I do like to start with the one that is in the base edition, Sex and Violets. What do y'all think about the Snake Charmer?
I'm such a coward with it, but I actually don't hate it. I think it can be really unfun for people, and I personally have not had fun being it because I tend to be a coward and just pick myself, or maybe I'm brave and pick one other person. At this, because I have been Fangooch up to now. I think now my worst fear is snake charming someone and becoming the demon. That just the thought of that makes me want to throw up. But I've also been the demon who was up shit creek without a paddle and had been snake charmed, and that was excellent for me personally. So I'm never gonna say I hate it as a character.
Yeah, I think the best way I've had heard the snake charmer described, which I think it was Jackie that said this to me, was that the snake charmer is an incredibly powerful role for town. It's just not always incredibly powerful for the person who draws the token.
Yeah.
I don't mind. I mean, I don't even mind. I know a lot of people really hate it when the demon gets snake charmed and outs the minions. Because I like being out at evil, I'm you know what? Fine. If my demon gets snake charmed and I get outed as a minion, I can go to 110% on being out at evil and seeing what chaos I can sow with. Even if I get executed, it's okay, you can execute me. I'm not the demon. That takes a day up. Or you can leave me alive, and I can use my ability to cause more chaos, and I can still talk. So, I don't mind it, but I understand why people don't like it. I think where it gets really tricky is metas develop where demons who get snake charmed then don't want to say anything because they don't want their former minions to have a bad time, and then that can kind of come full circle to town has a bad time if town loses when there's a snake charmer sitting there who never said anything. And so it's just really hard to navigate, and I kind of think it's really important play groups kind of probably should talk more than they do about what's our etiquette around this. Either we should we should be okay with saying it, or we should have a unspoken rule or an agreed upon rule that we're not going to out it until a certain point and be consistent with it, because otherwise it just leads to people feeling hard done by whatever you do.
All right, how do you all feel about Poppy Grower?
I just like it.
Okay.
To be honest, I think probably the only time I think the only time I'm okay with it as a character is in a Legion game. Otherwise, I kind of feel like the evil team starts off on the back foot already, and a poppy grower, in my experience, it just handicaps them so much more, and it is rough, and it can be really rough and really unfun.
I think it's hard to balance. I think
Mhm.
it can be done well. I do. One of my favorite experiences that I've had a few times is being a lunatic in a Poppy Grow script and figuring it out, because it makes the lunatic like actually like hard to figure out if you don't get minions who just deny being minions.
Mhm.
Um, so that's kind of I've had some really good games where like I figured it out at 5 Alive of like, oh, I must be the lunatic.
Excuse me for
um,
a second.
and yeah,
No
that's
problem.
fun, but I understand why people don't like it. I think it needs careful balancing, and often on custom scripts it doesn't have careful balancing.
All right, the next divisive character. How do y'all feel about Atheist?
I like Atheist. It
I really
is. Here's the thing. Atheist is one of those characters where I feel like Legion, like Riot, and to an extent like Leviathan, where you have to go in knowing that you're not playing a normal game of Blood on the Clocktower. Like you have the potential to be playing a very different game of Blood on the Clocktower, because you're not just solving, okay, who do I think is the demon? We have to kill this person. It's, do I think there's a demon at all? And then if so, who is it? But then if not, we have to kill the storyteller. And I think that's an extra fun little puzzle. I know a lot of people don't like that puzzle, and that's totally fine, but
Mhm.
it is one of those where I do think it's like you have to warn, like, people have to prepare themselves for that. Like, you can't spring it on people.
yeah, I agree with all of that, and I think a lot of these controversial characters, it comes down to you really need to be playing with definitely a storyteller that you trust to do it right, and also
Mhm.
with other players who you trust to kind of engage with the game in the right way. If you don't, if your first experience of Atheist is like a storyteller who isn't really up to it, you're not going to like an Atheist game. And I think it's one of those things where a lot of people jump into it before they should. Like I think I've run one Atheist game, and I didn't really want to do it. I didn't feel like I was ready, and that was when I probably played 700 games and story told 100, and I still didn't feel like I was like totally comfortable running an Atheist game well.
Yeah. Do you think you kind of prefer? I feel like there's almost two ways you can do it. You can kind of do a wackier Atheist game or a more like logic based game. Do you have a preference between those two, or do
I
you
think they
disagree
both.
with the premise
I
at
think they
all? I
both
don't.
have. No, I think they both have their place. I think like
Yeah.
I've had really fun atheist games where it's like obviously an atheist game because there's stupid stuff's happening, and I've also had the logic puzzle ones where it's like they're both fun where it's like there's two pieces of information that just don't make sense and you go, okay, it has to be an atheist. Um, I think it depends on the play group. Like again, like I think the storyteller really needs to like what are these people going to enjoy right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a place for both. Like, I
Yeah,
love me some silly clock tower, but also that cerebral stuff is really fun. And the cerebral lends itself better to the potential for an evil team successfully bluffing it's an atheist game. And having done that before, oh, it's so much fun. Like,
yeah.
that's fun.
But then
My
like one of
my.
my favorite. I think.
Oh.
Sorry, go on, Sam.
I was gonna say my style that I actually tend to run it like starts with the more logic puzzle base, and especially as people start figuring it out, I just make it more and more silly till where it's like painfully obvious, and people, in my experience, at least with my group, have enjoyed that quite a bit.
I think
Yeah,
that's important.
I do like when storytellers kind of maybe make a deal with the atheist to, like, hey, if you hold it for X number of days, like, that would be great, something. So it does kind of start out like a normal game, and then it gets silly off the rails, and then somebody's like, hi, I'm actually the atheist, and it all makes sense. Like, I do like that. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite atheist games that was just very silly. It's on the CT streams YouTube still. They did an April Fool's game where everybody except the atheist was a fool, but they were all told they were Serenovus mad about a different role for like most of the game, and that's just a really good one. Like they slowly figured out, oh, well, we've all just got the fool token, but we're all Serenovus.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, how do you all feel about Heretic?
I think it's kind of it's similar to Atheist in that it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. And
Mhm.
I think you have to know that it's on the script. You can't drop it on everyone. But I do think it's another like kind of puzzle solve, right? I don't hate it, but I also there are days where I'm like I can't like mentally I can't deal with this character. Like I can just barely handle like a regular game. I can't handle okay, now we have to flip it cuz there might be a heretic.
Yeah. I think one of the problems I've seen with Heretic is there's disagreement and totally reasonable disagreement amongst players about how it should be. Like there's people who think that like it should be mechanically solvable and that like that it's not fun if it's not mechanically solvable, and there's people who kind of have the opposite view of like the whole point of Heretic is it's meant to be like a social thing of once somebody claims it, do you socially believe that person is the heretic? And they're kind of fundamentally incompatible views of how the heretic should be. So it's kind of you also need to know which type of heretic game you're in. Is it one where there's going to be information, or at least potentially information that will solve it, or is it going to be one where you are just going to have to say, do I trust the heretic socially? I don't really like the latter. I prefer like if there's at least the possibility for some kind of mechanical information to like figure it out. But the flip that's challenging for script design because if it's solvable, if evil solves it early, then if they can kill the demon, so like it works well with like Little Monster. I think Heretic works well with Little Monster, for example, which other people don't like, but
I
like,
also
I think
think
it works well because it stops evil just saying, "Oh, there's a heretic in play. We're going to win now." Um,
I also think Heretic is a stressful character to be, and I think I think that's really unfun for an outsider. Like I I feel like Damsel's kind of the same way. Like any like you know, to an extent Saint, but like like but with Saint you have the ability to say, "Hey, I am the Saint. If you execute me, you'll lose," and then that's in everybody's hands. But with like Heretic, it's so stressful because you have to make sure you tell the good team at a certain point so that they know that they can't kill the demon or they'll lose, but you also need to make sure you're not telling the evil team because then the demon will just kill themselves and win. And it's like that is so much pressure. And it's just and it can be a lot of and that can really be unfun for people, so I totally get why people don't like it.
Yeah.
yeah, I think it needs to be on a script where there's a lot more layers than just like the demon can kill themselves or good can just decide to not kill the right players. And I think when it is released, it will have that when it's like released with its home script. But it's not many custom scripts have that well done at the moment. A few do, but it's hard to make it work.
Yep. One more character to ask about. This was mentioned earlier. How do you feel about Legion?
I'll go first on this one. I'm not a big fan of Legion. I just find it. I like the idea, but it just ends in feels bad games so often. And I even as like I think it's the number of times I've won a game as Legion and just felt bad about it afterwards, like because I've felt like I've just gaslit people, like just by I remember one where I just claimed to be the lunatic in a Legion game, and was kind of hard believed that I was the lunatic and that it wasn't a Legion game for the whole game, and it just didn't feel fun. Like good players were mad about it afterwards, and it's like, yeah, this wasn't a good way to win.
um I personally feel that Legion is a character that it should be not maybe not necessarily like the only demon on a script, but like you should go into this game or start the game like maybe it should only be with like Leviathan or like Riot or something where you know very early on in the game that it's either Legion or it's not. Um I have had very bad experiences with people with Legion paranoia, because people get really paranoid about Legion, and it can kind of completely dominate games and therefore make them less fun. I've also had a really bad experience where an engineer decided to create Legion, and then I was a good player that got turned into Legion, and it was just super unfun. And then we ended up losing that game because nobody, like, we didn't know who each other were, and it was not fun.
All right.
I've heard, and I think it makes sense to me, that Legion works a lot better in person than online. I don't think I've ever played a Legion game in person, but I think I can see that conceptually, like the idea of like it's being a more social game of almost everyone's evil and figuring it out. I can see why that might be fun in person. I kind of want to try that at some point.
Yeah, I would like. I've never played it in person either, but I'm the same way. I would love to try it or see how that plays out. All right. Well, one final question. Looking at the script here, this is very much not a serious question, and you can interpret it however you would like. What character would you like to be in real life from the script?
Is it morbid if I say cannibal?
Uh,
They eat people, gain their ability? Like,
I've heard. I won't say more morbid, but yeah. I mean, it's fine. I mean, you can you can interpret it however you like, or say whatever you'd like.
I mean, like, no, but like, honestly, is somebody who has like a very broken body and is not able to do most things, the ability to just like, not like I look forward to eating somebody. If we could omit that part, that would be great. But like, just for a day, have somebody else's skills and like, oh, today I can be a juggler. Oh, today, I'm the best gambler in the world. I can play poker better than anybody else. Or, today I can like fly a plane when I couldn't yesterday. Like, that sort of ability to do that would be really cool. I mean, again, the downside would be the eating of the people thing. Like, that is very like an unpleasant thing. But yeah, to just be able to step into somebody else's shoes for a day and be able to do exactly what they do at their level, that would be amazing.
I like that. Malashaan?
I don't think I can follow that.
You gotta.
I'm sure you can.
Can I just claim to be a sweetheart? That works for me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Fine.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Is there anything you'd like to plug? I know you have a stream you do, or anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, so you can follow my streams over at my Twitch channel, Reznora. We stream, Mal and I together stream every Thursday after TPI, where we play Clocktower, and it's my player perspective. And then other days, sometimes I play other games. Currently, I am doing a series where I am making every Blood in the Clocktower character as a character in The Sims 4. So I go in and I give them attributes, aspirations, and make outfits for them and everything, and just kind of like what they would look like in The Sims. And then I upload them to the gallery so you can download them and play with them.
That's fun. All right. Well, Malashaan Reznora, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
for having
us.
us.
All right. Well, thank you for watching Hard Claim with Viva La Sam. We'll be back next week with another episode.